Hello everyone, it's Brian here. I hope you had an excellent weekend. Today's video is really about 12-inch singles, which I'll get to in a moment. But before I do, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who took the time to watch my last video, who commented on the last video or liked it or reached out to me in some way. I really appreciate the feedback I got. It's been very heartwarming. And of course I will be fine. Here is the stitches, which you can see now. Maybe I'll put a photo in, trigger warning. They came out on Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to having those removed. But during this process, I was just thinking about the vinyl community. I've been watching vinyl community videos for 13 or maybe even 14 years. I find them very fascinating. And every once in a while, you stumble across a video from someone who is upset, or they've had it and they're leaving the vinyl community, and they lay out their grievances about what's wrong with the people who make videos, which I think sometimes they have very pointed things to say. Recently I saw one, I'm not going to mention any names, but someone who had negative things to say about this community we call the vinyl community, and I was really left scratching my head on that one. And there have been some pushback. Josh at the flip side has made a rebuttal video, and more recently I was watching a video from Robert Fidden, who said some very commonsensical things like, you don't have to watch all the videos in the vinyl community. You can follow whoever you want. You can say, don't recommend this channel to me. You don't have to participate in the whole conversation about audiophile or that kind of thing if you don't want to. Very obvious, but I guess it needed to be said. I appreciate that video very much. And I was, my experience here has been overwhelmingly positive, and this sort of solidified that for me, like the feedback I got. And it is funny though that of all the comments I've received only what I would say would be one kind of negative comment. Someone on the video about the 10 records I listened to the most, someone said in disbelief something like, "That's it? Those are the 10? Like those are essentially those aren't good?" And I just replied saying, well, maybe you could enlighten me and suggest some things I should check out, but they didn't reply. But the point here is that I found this community to be very, very supportive, and I've met 4 hosts in person, and I consider them to be friends. And more than that, I consider other hosts I've never met to be friends. So it's really weird that we can build what I would consider to be friendship without ever having met the person. So that's just a long-winded way of saying the support has been great. I think we're all very supportive of one another, and I think it's fantastic. So thank you for all the feedback. And one thing I did in the last video, though, is I tried to link up the issue of cancer with music, and I forgot a very obvious record in my collection, one that I've had for years, and I don't know how I missed it because it's one of my favorite artists, and that is this record from Lou Reed called Magic and Loss, which came out in 1992. Now, this record is really about 2 of his friends who he lost to cancer. One is Doc Pomus, who was a musician, composer, singer, who was influential, or important, I should say, important in getting Lou Reed into the business. And the other person is a person named Rotten Rita. So if you're a Lou Reed fan and you know the album New York and the track Halloween Parade, you may have heard that name before. He kind of name drops Rotten Rita in there. Someone who was involved in the whole factory scene with Andy Warhol. I think that person's real name was Kenneth Rapp, I think. The funny thing is the CD version actually has a drawing of both. This is Doc here. This is Rotten Rita over here. But the vinyl version doesn't have that. So this is my pressing from Germany from 1992. And it has a standard, inner sleeve with lyrics in English. And I guess because it was released in the European market, it has this interesting thing, which is lyrics in French on one side and lyrics in German on the other. But this is a really powerful record. It's probably not one that people who know Lou Reed casually will ever mention. But it talks a lot about, it talks specifically about cancer, but it talks about dying, it talks about the supernatural, vengeful gods, it talks about, goodbye mass, cremation. Really interesting record. There's so many good tracks on here. Some of it's really mellow, some of it may be a little depressing, but I guess what I'm saying is I can't believe I skipped this one because I don't know, I've listened to it many times, and this album is dedicated to Doc and especially to Rita. So really really good. Legendary Little Jimmy Scott appears on the Power and the Glory track in here, so that's a really good record. Sorry I missed it. And then a few maybe weeks or months ago, someone made a suggestion in a comment that I talk about some of my most valuable or maybe most favorite 12-inch singles, and I thought about that for a long time, and I thought, okay, this is something that would be good to do. And a warning, this may be part one. I might do more of these. In all these, I have several things that are part one, part two, part three, but this may continue. So I picked 5 12-inch singles that I like, that are, I would say favorites, maybe because some of them might be rare. I don't think anything here is truly valuable, but I picked 5 things anyway. So the first one, speaking of Lou Reed, is the Velvet Underground. This is a 12-inch single for A Foggy Notion, the edit version, and I Can't Stand It. Promotional copy not for sale, from the historic best-selling album VU. That kind of makes me laugh, because I don't know if that record was historic or best-selling. I guess if you're a Velvet Underground fan, it was historical. Was it best-selling? I don't know how they calculate that. It's an American pressing, and it has these gray Verve labels. So this came out in 1984 with those 2 tracks. Both tracks are taken from, as I mentioned, this record called VU. This is my Canadian 1984 pressing. And there are 3 paragraphs here which describe what this record actually is. So apparently, when they were preparing re-releases of the 3 Verve MGM Velvet Underground albums, they found some Velvet Underground tapes, which had been lost. So they include them here, and of course you might know that there's a second release called Another VU, and this focuses heavily on the Doug Yule years. There's an insert here with the John Cale version and the Doug Yule version. So only 2 of these, I think there's 8 or 10, whatever tracks on here. 2 of them feature John Cale, the rest are the Doug Yule iteration of the Velvet Underground, but this is really good. I think this is great, and the 2 tracks on that 12-inch single are really great. I Can't Stand It, there's a lead-off track, and then Foggy Notion later on here. So really good, and that's all I'll say about that. Just excellent. Here is a 12-inch single that I have mentioned in the past, but I can't remember why, and it's Morrissey, Hang On To Your Friends, from 1994. This is my number is 10,332, so I don't know how many they made of these. I'd be curious to know. This is Hang On To Your Friends. The flip side is an extended version of Moon River. And I've mentioned this before. I really remember showing this before. There's Morrissey for you. Topless Morrissey. And this is a 45 RPM cut of this track, these 2 tracks. Again, the Velvet Underground 12-inch single and this 12-inch single, I've only ever seen 1 copy of them, and it's on the day I bought these. So on different days, of course. I saw the Velvet Underground one. I had never seen it before, so I bought it. Same is true of this one. I bought this in Ottawa. I remember that for some reason. And of course, that track, Hold On To Your Friends, appears on this Morrissey album called Vauxhall and I. It's the 4th track on side A, and here is the inside of Morrissey dramatically lying down on the railway tracks. It always makes me laugh. And more train, I guess it's train, it's one of those carts, I guess. So Morrissey. Here's another 12-inch single that I've only ever seen once, and when I saw it, I bought it. This is from the Dukes of Stratosphere, Your Good Man, Albert Brown. And you may already know that the Dukes of Stratosphere are XTC in disguise. XTC, one of my favorite bands. And they recorded 2 psychedelic records. So this does beg the question of, what is a 12-inch single and what is an EP? Because normally I think of 12-inch singles as records that have extended versions or edited versions or different mixes of things. This really has 4 tracks that are just taken from their 2 albums. So it might be an EP, but we'll let that go. So the first 2 tracks are You're a Good Man, Albert Brown, and The Mole from the Ministry. They come from their 1987 record Sonic Sunspot, sounding very psychedelic. There's the band here. It's got a really cool insert. It's on colored vinyl, as the sticker says, and so I'll show you that since I have it out. It's kind of a, what color is that? Sort of purpley, maybe. Anyway, I think this is a terrific record. I do have the there's a CD copy which compiles this record with this one. So the other two tracks are called Vanishing Girl and My Love Explodes, which come from their 1985 mini album called 25 O'Clock, again with a really cool psychedelic cover. And the psychedelic thing, that's really cool if you ask me. And so the band go by different names. Sir John Johns, I guess that's Andy Partridge. The Red Curtain would be Colin Moulding, and then Lord Cornelius Plum and E.I.E.I. Owen round it out. Very cool. So yeah, I've only ever seen this once, and I bought it because I thought, I've never seen that before. Another one I've only ever seen once when I bought it is The Clash, and this is Return to Brixton, extended mixes. So as you may know, that comes from this record, London Calling, one of my favorite records of all time, The Guns of Brixton. And in 1990, it was remixed. This came out in 1991, but I think there was a 7-inch single in 1990, remixed by Jeremy Healy. And it has, side A is Return to Brixton, which is almost 7 minutes long, and side 2 is Return to Brixton, the SW2 dub mix. So these are kind of like dancey indie dub kind of tracks, which sort of fit well into the things they were doing around Sandinista. This is a promo copy, and I don't know if this is rare. I don't think it's worth much. Maybe it's rare in North America, but I'd never seen it before until the day I found it and decided to pick it up. So that is very cool. And the last one I wanted to show is probably the one that is easiest to find, but I like it, and it's from a band called either Nitzareb or Nitzareb, depending on your preference. This is called Murderous. So this has two versions of Murderous, Murderous and then the repetition Murderous, and then it has Fitness to Purpose. So they're an EBM band, electronic body music, and both of those tracks come from the 1987 release, That Total Age, from Nitzareb or Nitzareb. There's a flip side. Really cool. I love this band, and that would be a song where people were throwing themselves around the dance floor. Even I might have done that, but there's no video or photographic evidence, so we'll just leave it at that. I've also loved the album design on this one. I think it's pretty cool. So we'll call that part 1 of favorite 12-inch singles. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.